from sea to shining sea and everywhere in between.
Wherever you are around the country.
This is America's Outdoor Talk program, Outdoors This Week. Outdoors This Week.
Get the kids, get the dog, get the cat, sit them all down next to the radio. We are going to be talking about the great outdoors today.
And now, with America's latest news and talk on the great outdoors.
This is a dangerous place, man. You've got 1,000-pound bears wanting something that you have.
Here's your host, Alex Langer.
Thank you, Mr. Announcer. And I am privileged and thrilled to be here with all of you today. Yes, even you in the corner there. I can see you. Listen, we have somebody that is responsible for all of our jobs, even yours, Lynn. This guy is responsible for your job as well.
I'm going to have to thank him.
That's right, you are. You're gonna have to go to this lake.
I want to.
I hear he invited you.
He did. He wanted me to come not only fish at his lake, but go to a flea market with him. He likes to collect old trunks.
Really?
Big storage trunks.
Old trunks?
Antique trunks.
No kidding.
Mm-hmm. Loves it.
I better tell people who it is.
Yeah.
It's none other than Ray Scott himself. For those of you who don't know who Ray Scott is, first of all, shame on you. And secondly, Ray Scott invented modern bass fishing as we know it. He was the founder of the Bass Angler Sportsman Society, which was the first organization to really popularize bass fishing, and it gave bass anglers an identity that they never had before. Before, you could say we fished, we did this, we did that, but bass fisherman was never a term that was understood by anybody except the bass fisherman. It made it okay to be a bass fisherman, and actually made it somewhat prestigious to be a bass fisherman. So Ray is with us today. He follows in the footsteps of such American legends as Teddy Roosevelt, as Rachel Carson, and that's not just my opinion, that's Field and Stream Magazine's opinion. He's won countless awards, he's been inducted into countless halls of fame, and if there's a legacy for Ray Scott, it's probably catch and release and non-pollution. He went to great lengths to introduce catch and release into tournaments. So that's all we do now. It's catch and release. We don't keep anything unless it's to eat. And also the fact that rivers are clean in this country is, I'm not really overstating it, but it's in large part due to many of the lawsuits that Ray and his organization brought in the early days. They had a program called Peg-a-Polluter, which he went out and he sued people that were dumping sewage and chemicals into rivers. You know, remember that river in Cleveland that caught fire? That was before Ray Scott. The rivers would be catching fire if it weren't for my next guest. So that's it. Usually I brag too much, but this time I'm right on the money.
Hang tight. More of America's Outdoor Talk program, Outdoors This Week, after this.
Ta-da-da-da-da, one of our very, very favorite features. And we've done it. We haven't had one in a long time. Nature fakers and nutcases. Ta-da! And here I am reporting in again. I have in my hands here, in a Minneapolis paper, here's the headline. Groups opposed to Minnesota wolf hunt lose in court. Oh, boy. St. Paul, Associated Press. Groups challenging Minnesota's rules for wolf hunting and trapping season were dealt another blow Wednesday in their efforts to stop the practices. Minnesota's Court of Appeals dismissed a petition aiming to undo rules that allowed for a wolf hunting season. The appeals judges decided that two groups, the Center for Biological Diversity and Howling for Wolves group, lack sufficient legal standing to challenge the Department of Natural Resources. Quote, it's hard to put words into our disappointment and sense of injustice over this decision, said Dr. Maureen Hackett, founder of Howling for Wolves. A little sidebar here. Maureen is a psychiatrist. She is an unsuccessful congressional candidate and an environmental extremist. I use the word extremist. She considers herself an environmental activist. She could be really the poster girl for nature fakers. Howling for Wolves is a great group. This just is an ad hoc group that is asking for money to pour in. Among other things, she was instrumental in blocking the pipeline for Canada. I don't even need to know more about Dr. Maureen. The group contended that the DNR set its rules in a way that minimizes public input. The thing was the public input is the death here in Minnesota. The organization is now evaluating its options. They're trying to raise some more money, of course, for further court action after the second setback, said Dr. Hackett, psychiatrist. Minnesota resumed sport hunting and trapping after the region's wolves came off the endangered species list early last year. Hunters and trappers then killed 400-some-odd wolves during the state's first wolf season, which ended January, to the applause of the ranchers up north. The DNR plans to make decisions about the 2013 hunt this summer after the population survey is completed, said Ed Bogus, Director of Fish and Wildlife Division. They said the long-term commitment is to balancing the hunt with long-term sustainability. Quote, we manage the wolf season like we manage seasons for anything else, whether they be game, bird, or just plain other species. Legislation seeking to impose a 5-year moratorium on the wolf hunts stalled during the legislation's just completed session. Dr. Hackett was heartbroken. Anyway, well, I guess her order for plush wolf dolls, if you send in your $100 bill, going to slow down this week. By the way, there is no shortage of wolves. The wolves eat cattle. They are a problem here, and every once in a while they take out a few. It's as simple as that. And by the way, the pipeline that she brags about, that's one of her bragging points, that she helped ruled the pipeline that was supposed to go through Nebraska there. You got to hear her talk about that. That's a real, you know where this gal's coming from. Enough on nature fakers and nutcases. In Maureen's case, we give her a job for being a nature faker and right away a nutcase. She gets both awards in one. That's it for now. See you later, folks.
Small waters coming up on Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World.
Would you like to spend less time on the couch and more time in the fresh air? Would you like your kids to stare at a bobber instead of the TV? Would you gladly trade in your microwave for a Dutch oven? Then you belong at Bass Pro Shops. Every week, we offer free skills workshops to help you get started. See the store or go to BassPro.com for more information. Bass Pro Shops. Your adventure starts here.
When the heat of summer is stifling and really slows down bass fishing on big waters, just head for small waters like a pond, strip pit, or little lake. During summer, the best bass holding cover in small waters is a narrow band of weeds or algae running parallel to the bank. Cast a willow leaf spinnerbait and bring it right through these areas. Most bank anglers tend to fish by casting right up to the middle and reeling back. Instead, though, cast to your right or left as close to the bank as possible. The fish will be holding there, not in the middle. Get there early and try a buzzbait until the sun starts penetrating the water. When the sun is high, cast into the shade. Live or plastic baits will work great. In heavy cover areas, cast a weedless frog bait or jig and pig. But if you just want to relax and catch a few fish, no matter what kind, use a worm and a bobber, lay back, and just let the world go by. I'm Larry Whiteley, and this is Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World.
Thanks, Larry. And Larry owes his job to my next guest, because if it weren't for my next guest, Bass Pro Shops wouldn't exist. This show probably wouldn't exist. A lot of things now that we take for granted wouldn't exist. And according to Field and Stream magazine, Ray Scott walks with the outdoor gods. Individuals like Teddy Roosevelt, Rachel Carson, and he is among the top 20 who made a difference in the American outdoors over the past century. Ray Scott has achieved his own legacy as the Bass Boss, the founder of Bass Angler Sportsman Society, the Whitetail Institute of North America, and as a publisher and the founder for many successful publications. He's won many awards. I could just spend half the show reading the awards for Ray. At age 80, I don't know if you wanted me to tell him how old you are, But
yeah, that takes the pressure off women.
That's right. He's 80. He's 80. You got nothing to fear. But they do, don't they, Ray?
I won't be 80 until the 24th of August. So cut me a little slack,
Well,
would you?
I didn't put 80 there. My people put 80. So let cut him a little slack.
He told me he was 80. That's what he said.
You told her he
I
was.
will be. I'm not until the 24th. And anybody wants to come to my birthday party, they're welcome to come. You just have to bring something to eat.
Are you really having a birthday party, Ray?
Yeah, man, I'm having a birthday party at my house here, right on the big lake, and we got everybody invited. So
Really? So
and there is a requirement though, and I've been very candid and fair with them. I told them you got to bring a present,
right.
but they can't spend more than $5 for it. That's the limit. I'm putting I don't want any automobiles, bass boats, or anything of that sort.
Tell people about your home and your lake. What is that all about?
It is a dream come true. When I sold my primary interest in bass, I had a little money left over, and I bought this piece of dirt that was perfect for the building of a lake, a beautiful lake. And I've got 2 lakes, actually 3, but it's about almost 100 acres of the best bass fishing in the world. And I was very flattered that you mentioned earlier in your comments, Outdoor Life. They've, unbeknownst to me, I picked up the magazine one morning about 5 o'clock. I usually get up early to read my mail. And there was an article naming my lake the best bass fishing lake in America.
Really?
And I said, Lord have mercy, I didn't even know who to thank for it. But it is a good fishing hole, and I'm not as selfish as I was in the early days. I let people come in now if they got money.
as long as they can bring a few bucks. How big a bass has anyone caught in your lake? Let me cut right to the chase.
Well, let me tell you, I've caught the second biggest bass. It was 13 pounds and 6 ounces.
Wow.
And I got beaten by Rick Clunn. We had a little fundraiser for a church up the road about a mile, and I charged $5,000 entry fee, and all the pros jumped in the middle of it, and we raised $1,060,000. Did 4 different tournaments, but Rick Clunn, that rascal, he beat me. He caught a 13-15.
Wow.
Big monster. I mean, you know what's best about it all?
What's that?
As far as we know, he's still swimming.
He released that 13-15 right back in the lake.
And he didn't even know he'd gotten dried out almost.
Tom, man, was a great friend of mine, and when Tom would get frustrated, he'd go in the backhoe and he'd dig himself another lake. So I said, Tom, one day, if you lose a lure, it's not like you really lost it, is it?
Yeah, he designed that one lure to be lost. That was a little George.
That's correct.
Tom used to say he'd throw like the lure out there, and there's a piece of people that don't know it's just a piece of lead, a little bigger than a quarter, but heavy, little thickness on it. He had a treble hook on it and a little spinner on the tail, and he could fish that sucker better than anybody. And I fished with him one day. He made a cast, and a long cast, and he went to the bottom, and he pumped it a couple of times, and all of a sudden, boom, he said, "Bye, George." And that was the end of the lure. It hooked on a stump, a log or something.
Right.
And he said, I designed it to get hooked up, at the bottom.
Bye, George was kind of the reason he named it the Little George, right?
I think so, yeah. And Tom signed up for my very first tournament in 1967 up in Arkansas.
Really?
I knew him as pretty good then, and he was in the lure business in 67. And he sent his $100 in, but he never showed up. He just had a problem come up.
Right.
And it's the only time I've ever known Tom to leave money on the table.
We got to take a break, Ray. When we come back, I want to talk to you some more, okay?
Go for it, yeah.
All right, we'll be right back, folks, with Ray Scott himself.
I'm the big boss bass, and you work for me.
More of America's favorite outdoor talk program, Outdoors This Week, after these messages.
These are my weeds. You can drag your crankbait.
Wow! Woo! Hold on to that, and that's a good one since 1984. Tight Lines with Sammy Lee.
He's won over $2 million bass fishing, and he's caught most of his fish using the flipping technique. He's Denny Brower. Hello, this is Sammy Lee. I'll talk with Denny about the correct equipment to use for flipping after this.
It was the most successful product launch in fishing lure history. When smart baits were introduced at this year's Bassmasters Classic, the world of angling changed forever. To see what your buddies are going to be fishing with this year, go to smartbaits.net. As the world's only thermal-based color-changing fishing lures, Smart Baits produce when other lures fail. To order Smart Baits, simply go to smartbaits.net and begin catching fish you've never caught before. Smart Baits. Color changes everything.
Recently, I asked Denny Brower to tell me about the correct rod and reel to use for the flipping technique of fishing.
Well, the rod I prefer is the 7.5-foot Daiwa signature rod that we developed in the early 80s, basically 80% backbone and 20% tip action, which allows you not only to present a bait in the pitching technique, but it's got enough backbone to get the fish out of the heavy cover with both the pitching and the flipping technique. I think that's about the ideal length of the rod. You've got the long handle, which gives you the leverage to get the fish out of the cover. With that, I'm using the TD1 Daiwa reel, and normally sticking with 20-pound strand or above as far as line strength, because you do have to use the heavy line to get the fish out.
How about baits? Now, there's so many baits on the market now, and almost everybody talks about a flipping jig or a flipping worm. Are jigs and worms the only two baits you can flip with, and why would you use these baits?
Those are the two most popular, Sammy. The reason is they're weedless baits, and you're putting it into these heavy cover situations, and naturally if you're putting it in there, if a fish don't eat it, you got to figure out how to get it back out of there. And those two baits are what the majority of the people use. But keep in mind, this is a technique, or these are techniques to present a bait into a place that's hard to cast to. So I've seen situations where I've caught a lot of fish pitching spinner baits underneath boat docks, actually pitching topwater baits up between trees that were hard to cast to. It's just a technique to get a bait into a strike zone. The bait is, at the mercy of your imagination, basically.
Boy, it certainly is. Denny Brower will be here again next time, so I hope you will too. I'm Sammy Lee, and until next time, tight lines.
Tight Lines, brought to you by FishMate,
The ultimate fishing app for your smartphone.
by UFP,
America's leading maker of brake systems for boat trailers.
by Smart Baits,
Color changes everything.
and by Cheyenne Ridge Signature Lodge.
Discover why our lodge earned 2 Beretta Tridents.
Thanks, Sammy Lee. And we have a man with us today who, according to Field and Stream magazine, walks with the outdoor gods, like Rachel Carson, like Teddy Roosevelt, and just like Teddy, just like Mr. Roosevelt, he's got a lake named after himself, so that he built with his own hands. The man, of course, is none other than Ray Scott. Ray Scott invented modern-day bass fishing as we know it. That says everything. Without Ray, I never would have gotten into bass fishing. I never would have invented the flying lure or marketed it. And a lot of people wouldn't be doing what they're doing if it weren't for my guest today. Ray, did you ever think back in 1967 how big this would become?
Well, I must tell you, I didn't imagine it would be this big because I was too busy trying to survive.
Right.
And I was a married man with a house payment, 2 car payments, and 3 kids in school.
Right.
And but the idea was a hard, hot idea, and I knew that fishing was more than just Ray Scott, you and your buddy going fishing someplace one afternoon. But it was. I looked at things like, well, the day I got the idea, and I got to tell you a real short version. It's in my book, a book called The B.A.S.S.
Right.
And for those that want to get a copy, I don't even sell it at bookstores, but they call my 800 number and send them a copy of it.
Yeah,
I'll give you that number in a minute.
I know the guy that wrote it used to do a show with us here.
It's the 800 number.
Okay.
You can call it. All you need is a credit card, and we'll send you that and anything else you want. 1-800-518-7222. It's good. You need to bring back old memories. You know, Tom Mann was a great friend of mine. He's been dead a few years now.
Yep.
But he was one that when I first started this thing, I had a few friends, and of course he was from Alabama.
Right.
And he was one of the first guys I called, and he agreed it was a great idea and promptly sent me a $100 entry fee. But he was the only guy out of 106 men, 13 states wide, that did not show up. He just got tied up with something, business or whatever it may have been, making little Georges or whatever he was doing that day. But he never showed up, and I never gave his money back. Was Tom in the lure business before Bass was started? Yeah. He beat me. I started in '67.
Right.
And I'm guessing Tom was a game warden when he started the lure business.
Right.
And he got making so much money, he couldn't stay in the game warden business. But that would have been in. He started, I think, about I'm guessing about 8 or 9 years before I started bass. He was a game warden in Alabama.
Right.
And then when I actually got I was almost underway. He was too. We got in '67. He was full time in the lure business.
Right. Are you the most proud of catch and release? You pioneered a lot of things, But we just lost our old friend Doug Hannon here, who used to be a regular in the show.
One of my best friends.
Yeah. If you were going to pick one thing for your legacy, would it be catch and release, or would it be something else?
I think you were real close on that catch and release, because it was one of those God messages that I got. And I'll tell you, if I got a second, I'll tell you real quick how it happened.
Right.
We were not breaking any laws. I know the limit on the first tournament I had was 10 bass per day, and I left that alone at that time. And there was no catch and release, and everybody brought them in dead, on stringers.
Right.
But I had shortly after that, I got crossways with the state, and they were allowing people to put crap, sewage, and chemical waste into these rivers of Alabama. We've got more rivers and miles of river than any state in the nation.
Right.
And they were just dumping crap in there. Hey, raw sewage. I'm gonna tell you something. I was a little boy. I used to take it by the buddy. We rode a bicycle with two cane poles strapped to the crotch rod under the seat.
Ray, where did you grow up? What town in Alabama?
Montgomery, Alabama. Anyway, getting back to business, the catch and release was critically important to me, because what was happening, and after I sued all those companies, 200 something companies that were dumping illegally. There's a federal law that says thou shalt not dump anything into the navigable streams of America without a permit from the U.S. Corps of Engineers. Alabama didn't know about that. And most states did. I mean, Texas was bad. I ended up suing Texans and doing the same thing, and also Alabamans. But the thing that I remember best, and I think I'm proud of this, once I started catch and release, and the reason it happened after the lawsuit, some guy from Texas, who was a member of a federation of fly fishermen. I don't know whether you've ever heard of that organization.
Right.
Federation of Fly Fishermen. They're quite a prominent, kind of sophisticated group of people. Yeah. And anyway, somebody heard about my lawsuit, and they invited me to come down to Florida for their southeastern version of their convention. And I went down and told them the story about the pollution and whatnot. And a week or so later, I got a call from one of the officers, and he said, "Ray, we're having a conclave." I didn't know what the devil a conclave was. That's an Alabama word for convention. And we're having it in Florida. Told me about it, and he asked if I could come down. I said, "We can't pay you, but we'd like you to tell us about that lawsuit and what you're doing." So I went down, and anyway, that was an introduction to the fly fishing world.
Yep.
And then they invited me to come out later to make a speech to them in their conclave in Colorado. And I went out there and had a great time with those guys who had learned a little bit more about fly fishing. I still love it, and always have. But, I'm going to be honest with you. I sound like a preacher, but I'm telling you, He's blessed me 100 ways by letting things happen like that. I went, from that result, I went with the Federation of Fly Fishermen, and you know what they were doing?
What?
They weren't killing fish. They were releasing fish.
Really?
My gosh, I've never seen it like that. So I went home with the idea, and I started catch and release the next year.
So trout fishermen gave you the idea for catch and release. Why did you never allow fly fishing in tournaments?
Well, we didn't have fly fishing in our tournaments. It was just that you can't compete as a fly fisherman, and I say that with all the respect of fly fisherman. I'm a fly fisherman myself occasionally.
Right.
But it was it's very cumbersome. We always paired two men. We paired you with a guy from another state, and every day you changed partners. And you couldn't leave the boat to go to the bathroom or anything. You were in there. That was security.
Right.
And everybody respected that, and we've never had a problem. I mean, I can count on one hand any little rub we've ever had.
Yep.
But people like hard, harsh, tough, enforced rules. We don't mind losing, but I want to lose in an atmosphere of fairness.
Right.
That's the reasoning. And we've never had a problem. We've had one or two little bumps in the road, but we always snuffed it out and put them away. But no real problems. And that's why our tournaments have been as attractive and so popular in being copied
Right.
by other tournament people, and that's great.
Right.
We got bass clubs. By God, we must have, I don't know what the count is now, about almost 3,000, 3,500 maybe.
Right.
Bass clubs scattered all over the country, all over the world.
Right. If there's one thing you did for bass fishing, is you kept it clean. We're going to take another break. We'll be right back with Ray Scott. Ray, are you okay with that?
You bet you.
All right. We'll be right back with Ray.
Hey, what do you think you're doing? Don't change that dial. Alex will be right back with more of Outdoors This Week after these messages.
Well, I got me a bass boat equipped to the max. Gel coat sparkle, she's my waterproof.
Don't try recreational shooting or hunting unless you're ready to jump in full bore. Paul Pluff of Smith & Wesson says he's seen it over and over. First-time shooter or hunter discovers a new passion. Suddenly, he can't get enough of his new sport. I'm Wade Bourne, and this is Wired to Hunt Radio. In a minute, Paul joins us to talk about how the pleasures of shooting and hunting can be addictive.
More Wired to Hunt Radio coming up.
Reliable, durable, and fun to shoot are just a few of the ways people describe their experiences with the M&P Pistol Series from Smith & Wesson. Available in multiple calibers and frame sizes, these lightweight, high-strength polymer pistols are fine-tuned machines both inside and out, designed to meet the needs of law enforcement pros and recreational shooters alike. The M&P Series has you covered no matter your flavor. To learn more about the M&P Pistol Series, visit www.smith-wesson.com.
Planning to head outdoors today? The National Shooting Sports Foundation reminds you to check the fire danger levels in your area. Whether target shooting, camping, or even parking a car with a hot exhaust, remember to take precautions. If you're going shooting in dry conditions, minimize the possible risk of fire by not using steel-jacketed or steel core ammunition, tracer rounds, or exploding targets. As we know, wildfires have many possible causes. Don't be one of them.
This is Wired to Hunt Radio.
Paul Pluff has spent his adult life working for Smith & Wesson. Recently, he told me one of his favorite things to do is to go out with a first-time shooter or hunter and watch their reactions to the challenges and pleasures of these sports. Paul says they can be very compelling.
People who are against guns or afraid of guns is purely because of a lack of knowledge. You know, it's intimidating. It's a mystery to them. And you get people out on the range and you slowly walk through, here's how you safely handle the gun, and then walk through the fundamentals of shooting. And when they hit that target for the first time, they absolutely light up. It is a thrill that you just can't take away from them. And they want to do it again, and they want to do it again, and they want to do it again. And I tell everybody, the people who aren't hooked on shooting or hunting have just never tried it. Because once you try it, you can't help but enjoy it. It's no different than the guy who is an avid golfer. I mean, you go out there, and the first time you pick up a club, you put down the basics. You're not quite sure how to do it right. You may fumble through it, but as soon as you start to master that, where you're hitting that ball and it's going where you want to, it's a thrill. You get hooked. And shooting and hunting is exactly the same aspect. I mean, once you try it with very little instruction, if you have a good trainer, a little bit of instructor, anybody can be a good shot. And once you start doing it, it gets very addictive. You get hooked on it, and you want to do it more.
That's Paul Pluff of Smith & Wesson, and that's also today's Wired to Hunt Radio. I'm Wade Bourne saying thanks for listening, and get outside.
Thanks, Wado. And we have a guy by the name of Ray Scott. Now, Ray is the inventor of modern bass fishing, for lack of a better word. He walks with the outdoor gods like Teddy Roosevelt and Rachel Carson and people like that, and that's what Field and Stream said about Ray. I'm a collector of early Bassmaster magazines, and I noticed I got a copy of issue number 1 in front of me right now.
Well, you're lucky to have that. What, do you want to sell it by any chance?
You buying?
Well, yeah, I know people that want to buy it. They've been out of circulation for a while.
I know. This magazine was spring 1968, and the only ads you have in there are one for Jack Wingate and the other one for a guide service, and I think that's it.
That's all. And the only reason they got them, that was a free ad, but they'd given me a fishing trip. The reason I gave it to them.
so you were already an operator back then.
I was so broke I couldn't pay attention back in those days.
You got a picture of a 60s rocker, said, "Daddy never had that time to take me bass fishing."
That's the best. You know where it came from?
Where?
The picture you're describing is one page, and it had a little sissy-looking boy with his hands on his hip.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's kind of looking at the camera, and the cut line under it said, Daddy never had time to take me fishing.
That's right.
Bass fishing, yeah.
Take a boy fishing today.
Oh, yeah. Well, those are great days. And that Verse magazine, they got to remember, I was broke. I had 3 kids, a house payment, 2 car payments, and kids ready to think about college.
Yep.
But God just said, let it happen, boy. And every time I turn around, somebody like Jack Wingate or you would call. I just had help from all directions. And I did the same thing with a deer hunting. I've been a deer hunter. We got fabulous deer hunting in Alabama. And I started the Whitetail Institute about 25 years ago.
Yeah, tell me about the Whitetail Institute. I don't think a lot of people associate you with whitetail.
Well, it's a good story, but the way it happened, I've been a deer hunter ever since Alabama got deer, but we was out there one time and planted I used to plant wheat and oats and stuff, and on these little fields we clear, plow up and prepare with fertilizer and such, and on this little spot I went to the seed man the second year, and he gave me the wheat and the ryegrass and whatever else. I piled a pickup truck, and he said, "Hey, Ray, try a bag of this stuff." And it was a bag of Ladino clover. I found out later it was a bag of stuff that came originally out of Italy, northern Italy. But anyway, long story short, I planted some of that stuff along with the wheat and the ryegrass and other stuff, and nothing pulled deer like that stuff. And so I found out, I called Auburn University where they got a great ag department, and found out that the guy that heads that department brought that clover originally from northern Italy, brought it to America, a 5-pound sack of it.
Really?
And they studied it, and they researched it and realized that it had something hot. It was a high-protein product. Mm-hmm. And so they started producing it. And anyway, long story short, it finally found its way on the market. And I got some of it, and I planted it on a field about the size of a football field. And I had a guy with me. We broke the field up in 3 parts. And so the deer stand, the deer box we had, when you look out there, you can look right and left, and it was we had 3 different things planted. In the middle section was that clover. And we planted it, and I forgot it. And then when the season got underway, I went and crawled up there one afternoon about 5:15. I was dozing off, and just before dark, and all of a sudden, 6 deer marched in from the right. And they marched in like they're going to town to go shopping. And there was one buck. It wasn't a big buck, just a 6-point. But in those days, like they had horns, I killed it. I shouldn't say that, but it's a fact. I don't do it anymore. I couldn't imagine why, when those deer came on the field from the right, my right, they marched through that wheat, never looked down, never put their nose down, marched through the wheat, and then dug into the clover. Right. And out the bang, I shot my deer. And then that night I got into bed, and as usual, I had to replay the day, and I got to thinking, why did they do that? I know they like the wheat because we planted it every year. This year we added this new stuff. Why? Next morning I called Auburn University, and everything unfolded. And I realized that they were the ones that had brought it into the country and refined it. And so I started selling it, and from that came the Whitetail Institute of North America.
Right.
I might add, I got a phone number if you want it. So.
We got to end the show, but go ahead and give them the phone number.
All right, just try this number. It's my number, 800-518-7222. And that'll ring at my office, and we'll give you anything you want, books. And I wish people would come down and fish with us. We'll have some great times ahead.
People call that number if they want to fish with you?
Well, they won't be fishing with me per se, but fish with at my resort right there where I live. Yeah, we got all the information. We can send the poop to you, tell you when, where, and how. We're booked right now, but we'll have some openings in a little bit later on in the fall.
Heck, I'm going to call that number myself.
Yeah, why not? It's 518-7222. That's the 800 number, of course.
800.
But I appreciate you calling me, and it's always a pleasure to talk to a good outdoorsman like yourself. And hope we can talk again. And anybody up there wants to fish with us should get on that number I just gave you, and give us a call, and we'll give you the whole story.
Ray Scott, thank you. You're a god among mortal men when it comes to bass.
Well, I'll let you talk about that on Sunday.
All right, Ray. Thanks for being with us, folks. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you all next time on Outdoors This Week. Bye-bye.
Alex Langer, Outdoors This Week.